welcome to EIU's Global Outlook video for March 2024. I'm Emily Mansfield, Regional Director for Europe, and I'm joined today by Adeline Van Houtte, Senior Analyst for Europe and our lead Russia forecaster. We'll be talking about the outlook for the war in Ukraine in the context of growing war fatigue and uncertainties about the future of funding from the West. So Adeline, to start, we know that efforts by both sides to take control of large swathes of territory last year have really given way to a bit of a stalemate now. What do you think could unlock the situation?
Well, the one trigger that could unlock the stalemate in Ukraine is an important upgrade or downgrade in military equipment for either side. But this is not going to happen this year. And on one side, we have Ukraine facing several problems. War fatigue is starting to set in, and this will be adding to growing shortages of manpower and weapons. And on top of that, Ukraine's international military support is not as solid as it was, and aid packages risk being reduced. And overall, this will prevent any leap in capabilities that could generate a meaningful improvement on the battlefield. And then on the other side, we have Putin, who has really put Russia onto a war footing, with much of the economy now geared towards supporting the war in Ukraine. Plus, Russia currently has an advantage in terms of both arms and manpower. That said, there are constraints on the Russian side as well.
How do you think the conflict will evolve in 2024?
But this year, we expect a shift in Ukraine's military approach from an offensive to a defensive strategy. And this is because the level of external support will decline, reflecting rising war fatigue in Western countries, but also reduced capacity to continue supplying military equipment to Ukraine. But that doesn't mean that Russia will be able to make any major advances either. Ukraine will probably ramp up its long-range strike campaign inside Russia. Ukraine has been doing this more frequently recently, really hitting Russian oil and gas infrastructures located in some cases hundreds of kilometers from the front line. And this will help Ukraine to push Russia to spreading out its anti-air defense. And it could also disrupt the Russian economy by hitting one of its key economic sectors, which are oil and gas. And then meanwhile, we have to keep in mind that, yes, Russia has less severe issues with manpower and equipment than Ukraine has at the moment, but this is not without constraints, and Russia cannot produce shells and manpower at the same pace as they are being exhausted. And this is likely to prevent Russia from taking more Ukrainian territory this year. And then importantly, we do not expect Western support to collapse to a point that would really allow Russia to make major territorial gains. And this is because this would send a powerful message to other revisionist powers about the West's lack of sticking power. Now, of course, this continued Western support is based on the assumption that Joe Biden will win the 2024 US election.
And the US election is, of course, the big wild card this year. What do you think will happen if Trump wins and becomes the next US president?
Well, if Trump wins the election in November, US support for Ukraine in 2025 is at great risk. Trump's priority is basically to broker some sort of deal between Russia and Ukraine to end the war as quickly as possible. And so it could mean cutting aid to Ukraine by swaying some Republican lawmakers and really forcing Ukraine to the negotiating table. And this would also mean that a compromise would probably be imposed on Ukraine on Russia's terms. And this would also raise Russia's geopolitical status and come with high risk of instability in Europe.
So our central forecast right now is this will be a really protracted conflict. What do you think will happen in the longer run?
Well, obviously, for both Russia and Ukraine, a long war will come with negative consequences. For Russia, domestic political constraints will increase, especially in terms of mobilization and rising inflation, and this will increasingly spark social discontent. There are already signs of unrest related to mobilization efforts. The economy is also now overheating. Production capacity cannot keep up with domestic demand, and actual inflation is much higher than the reported figures. And then at the same time, the acceleration in real wage growth will soon start to fade. And this will end up impacting domestic political consensus on the war and public support for Putin. And then for Ukraine, clearly, its efforts to join the EU will be complicated by the ongoing war. There is little chance that Ukraine will join the bloc in the coming years, and this in large part because of the difficulty of extending security guarantees to a country which is at war. And then lastly, Ukraine's recovery and reconstruction will also be a long and bumpy road. Given the large scale of Ukraine's financing needs, only some of this cost will be met through external aid, and private investment will also be needed. But this will be problematic while the conflict continues, because it will be difficult to persuade lenders to finance reconstruction projects when there is a continued risk of war-related damage.
Thanks very much, Adeline, for your insights. It certainly sounds like there's a long road ahead for Ukraine. And this brings us to the end of this Global Outlook video. You can find plenty more about Russia, Ukraine, and what to watch in 2024 as you browse through our Viewpoint website. Thank you very much for watching, and goodbye.